Well, good afternoon, everybody. To those of you listening online, as many of you know, I typically make an announcement at the beginning of my press conferences, but today I don't have anything specific to share. But I do know that many of your questions will focus on the recent arrests of former Phoenix police officers Antonio Felix and Luis Vasquez Jr. So I'll update you with what I can share on this case. Let me start off by saying for all the cases we discuss, a person is presumed innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. So earlier this week, my office received the submittal for charges against the officers, and we conducted an incident review of that case. Many of you have already received the direct complaint from my communications team on Tuesday evening, so you could see the charges that we filed. The charges for both officers are kidnapping, aggravated assault, threatening and intimidating, tampering with evidence, and conspiracy to commit hindering prosecution in the first degree. There are other charges that each officer faces separately from the other. And I am putting one of my most experienced teams on it that literally have decades of experience. Let me be very clear. This case is about the conduct of these individual former officers. It is not a reflection on the countless men and women who uphold their oaths and put their lives on the line every day to keep our community safe. My commitment to the community is to ensure that every person, including those entrusted with enforcing the law, is held accountable when there is evidence of criminal conduct. So this is an open case, and please understand that I have ethical obligations as a prosecutor that limit what I can say and answer. But with that, I will open the floor for your questions.
Hi.
Hi,
Ashley Holden with ABC 15. I'm a little short for this mic, but we've got it.
I feel your pain.
Have you had to, when you're going through your cases, disclose any Brady violations? Is that to this point? What is that process of reviewing those cases as well?
Let me just go through the process that we're going through right now. That may answer a lot of questions. First of all, we have open cases, and yes, we are asking the prosecutors in light of all the facts of the case that just happened to evaluate that case in terms of whether it impacts the case in some way or another. Obviously, to disclose it. We have added it to our, as you call it, Brady list. We call it the Rule 15 disclosure database. And I've also asked our prosecution integrity unit to review closed cases involving these officers. So we're in the process of doing that right now. And so I don't have numbers to give you because obviously the context of their involvement is very relevant in each case.
When you talk about reviewing these cases, are you right now at this time, can you say concerned about any of those open or closed cases?
Well, of course I'm concerned. Anytime you have any sort of credibility at issue, I'm going to be concerned about it. But until we get through that, you have to review it in light of, knowledge of what happened. I don't want to give you any numbers of, how many cases and what their involvement was, what the impact will be on that case. But we are definitely looking into all of that.
One of the biggest concerns we hear from the community is that this could be the tip of the iceberg, that there's more things that either these officers or other officers were involved in. Is your office, speaking with Phoenix Police, involved in any other parts of this investigation if they're looking into that?
Well, I can tell you that we did an incident review on this case this week with the team from the Phoenix Police Department that it's investigating. I know that, they share our concerns that, anytime anything like this happens, we want to make sure it's an isolated incident or not. But I can tell you the team is very diligent, very committed to the process. And so if that comes up, we'll deal with it as it comes up.
Are there challenges also when it comes to police officers and these criminal charges moving through the courts, representation from the county, things like that?
Can you be more specific about that?
Just because they're involved in other cases, could there be issues?
Sure, like we've talked about, I wanna make sure these are people who potentially are witnesses in other cases. And I wanna make sure that we've not only disclosed this information to the defense, but we've evaluated the case in a new light with this information.
We have heard from the chief that there's no video evidence in this case. Can you talk about building a case without video evidence?
Well, unfortunately, I'm old enough that I remember a lot of cases without video evidence, and they are still provable. You look at witness statements, you look at a lot of other information that's available. So, without going into any detail in this case, it's certainly possible to prosecute a case without that.
Would you say that you feel confident in prosecuting this case?
Well, by the very nature that I filed the case, shows that we believe that there is a reasonable likelihood of conviction.
Final question, I think for some people, they follow along with the court process, but can you describe just where this case goes from here? Because I know for some people, it can be quite confusing.
Yeah, basically, there's a direct complaint that already has been filed. There are two options for us at that point. We can either go with a preliminary hearing, which involves a judge, or we can go to a grand jury, which just involves a grand jury, obviously. If probable cause is found by an independent person or jury, then we proceed to arraignment. That would be the next step. And then it will be set on a court's docket, and trial dates will be set, intermediate dates will be set. So it'll be handled just like it's handled every other case that comes through this office, no matter who the defendant is.
And one question outside of this, has any charging decision been made for the man who was arrested for damaging a Phoenix traffic camera?
I believe, yes, there has been a charge decision on that for criminal damage.
Thank you.
Hi.
Hi.
Is your office assisting Phoenix Police in its investigation of the South Mountain Precinct and whether this incident is part of a wider spread issue?
We are not assisting the investigation. We are not an investigative agency, as you know. We're a prosecution agency. Their investigation is ongoing, and we're in communication with them. But we'll be reviewing any case that is submitted to us if there are any further cases submitted to us.
And how important is establishing motive behind these former officers' actions from a prosecutorial standpoint? Chief Giordano said at Saturday's press conference that he still didn't know why the officers behaved the way they did, and was just curious whether that's something that your office is looking into as well.
We don't necessarily know the motive either. Fortunately, motive is not an element of the crime that has to be proven in court. Is it something that a jury might wonder about, want to see? Of course, that's a possibility. But it's certainly not the first time we've had cases in this office where we don't really know exactly why somebody committed a criminal act, but we have been successful nonetheless.
And has your office contacted the victims in this case? And if so, have they agreed to testify as witnesses should this case go to trial?
Yeah, for obvious reasons, I'm not going to go into that.
Sure. And then if there were other people to exist, other victims who were too afraid to come forward or were afraid of repercussions, things like that, what would you say to those people who might be reconsidering that decision?
What I would say is that anybody that has any information about this case needs to contact the Phoenix Police Department. I can tell you from my meetings with them that they are doing a diligent investigation. I know that Chief Giordano, and I commend him on this, acted quickly and decisively. And so if you have information about this or any similar cases, please contact the Phoenix Police Department.
And last question, is your office considering whether to refer the case to a different attorney's office due to a potential conflict of interest?
I'm not aware of any conflict of interest.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Hey there.
Hi.
I'm Sasha Hupka with Vote Beat. I have a little bit of a different topic than I think maybe what everyone else has today.
Okay.
But I just wanted to ask you, what's the status of the suspected non-citizen voters that were referred to your office by the county recorder?
So let me give you some numbers as I go through it. So 207 cases or voters were referred to us. 147 of those were registered to vote but had not voted. 60 voted. We focused initially on the 60 who voted. We're working our way through that. We are almost completed in terms of determining whether any or some of them were not citizens. As soon as we get to the end of that, I will be releasing the results as to just those 60, since those are 60 who did vote. But there are some questions left to be answered that I want to be able to give you the answers to, and so we're wrapping that up.
And I know that the Attorney General's office also had these voters referred. Are you guys coordinating on this? And if so, can you describe what that looks like?
I wouldn't say we're coordinating. What we have done is we took the 60 people who actually voted, and then the non-voting people who were registered came off of two separate lists. We took one list, they took the other. So obviously we've coordinated to the extent that we've discussed how who's gonna handle what, but no, we're not coordinating our investigation.
And can you share any like preliminary numbers around what you're finding? Are all of these people non-citizens, or are you finding that there are citizens?
We are finding that there are citizens.
Thank you.
Not all of them, but yes, some of them. Yes.
Thank you.
Hi, County Attorney, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good. I want to put the traffic stop with the Phoenix police officers into context if possible. So my question is, during your tenure as county attorney, for as many years as that has been,
Okay.
can you recall a time where there was a traffic stop involving one or multiple Phoenix police officers that got allegedly as violent as this one did, and that you had to file charges against said officer? Can you recall a time you've been in this position?
No, I mean, we certainly have filed other charges against other officers, some involving violent acts, but nothing like this.
Yeah. And what do you think that says about the Phoenix Police Department as a whole?
You know, I don't think it says anything about the Phoenix Police Department as a whole. It says something about two former officers. And I don't have any information to say that it goes beyond that point. And I've seen, very diligent action taken by the Phoenix Police Department. They're taking it very seriously. If it expands beyond this, we'll have to see that, and we'll certainly respond appropriately.
I have one off-topic question. We recently aired a story on a gentleman named Christopher Lochner. This was a Gilbert man who is accused of taking his ex-girlfriend's body, placing her in his car, putting her in her own bedroom where she sat decomposing for multiple days before the Gilbert Police Department found her. You had a pending case that was active against him. He was on pretrial release. The allegations contained in a motion filed by one of your deputy county attorneys in late June was that he was not doing anything he was supposed to do in terms of supervised conditions with the probation department. He was on drugs, he had a weapon when he wasn't supposed to, and he was in frequent contact with the same victim he's now accused in the second case.
Mm-hmm.
We've talked before about concerns you have with supervision by the probation department, even whether it's after a case is adjudicated or while they're supervising somebody on pretrial release. Can you tell me what those are again so that we can hear them one more time? And do you have any specific concerns with what I just mentioned?
Well, without talking about an ongoing case, what I will say is this, that most of our offenses in Arizona are probation eligible when it's a first time offense not involving violence. So I'm talking about the primary offense, not the secondary offense. That means a lot of people are going to be put on probation, and probation needs to be responsible in terms of supervising the individuals. And if they're not, complying with their supervision, then they need to be filing petitions to revoke probation. And they need to be held accountable by the courts when they have violated their probation. So when that doesn't happen, obviously that does create concern about the reliability of it. And so I would certainly say that needs to be looked into by the courts, because the courts oversee the probation department.
I just have two more quickly on that. There's a push to potentially move probation supervision to the executive branch. At least that's what I'm hearing potentially this next legislative session. Is that something you would support?
I'd have to look at the details of that. I mean, obviously how that would interplay with the courts. I don't want to commit to that, but I mean, certainly if there is a fix that is needed, I would, support certainly looking at that.
And are you finding in some of your probation related cases that the probation department is in agreement with the recommendations of your office, meaning when you feel there should be a petition to revoke, they're actually doing that?
Well, a lot of times, the way that works is that once they're sentenced here, they're put on probation. The probation officer then takes over the supervision. We don't do the supervision. So it's not like we're getting regular reports saying this person is violating. The way we find out about probation violations is if they're what's called a term 1, meaning they're a criminal violation, as in this situation. And then we do a retrospective and see that there were other violations that are technical violations, is what they're called. So, it is definitely something that they need to be monitoring in their probation years. Yes.
Thank you so much.
Good afternoon. Back to the two officers. I know a lot of questions have been answered, but I think some of the chatter online comes from those comparing police brutality incidents. Can you just give insight to viewers on what the factors are in this case for you to pursue it compared to others?
Well, I mean, in this office, we follow the evidence. If there is evidence that a crime was committed, sometimes there is, for example, in police officer involved shootings, if that's what they're being compared to, we're looking at the entirety of the situation, the context, the totality of the circumstances, to judge whether the steps that the officer took were reasonable, whether it's self-defense or something like that. We did that same analysis here, and obviously we ended up filing charges.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Hi. So you mentioned that you haven't dealt like a case exactly like this before with these two fired and charged Phoenix police officers. What was your initial reaction when you heard about these allegations?
Obviously, anytime somebody, we hold prosecutors, we hold police to a higher standard. And anytime there's potential that people have violated the trust of the community, I take it very seriously.
One of the charges is hindering prosecution.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk about that charge specifically and how that's going to impact this case? Were those efforts to hinder prosecution successful in any way?
Well, obviously not, because we filed charges, but I don't want to go into the details of what the evidence is related to that, but obviously we felt like we had evidence that showed that occurred.
We know these police officers were on the force for 8 and 9 years. I know you said you can't talk specifically about how many open and closed cases you guys are reviewing, but are you able to say, hundreds, dozens, any kind of general number?
I don't think it's going to be anywhere near the hundreds, but I don't want to give a number beyond that. It's a situation where, again, we have to go back and look at what, if any, involvement they had in a case. Sometimes names get associated to cases where the involvement was so minimal. We're going to look at that, but obviously we're going to disclose this to any open case and then review every single case that's closed.
Clearly that process is ongoing, but are you concerned that we could see a lot of these open cases dismissed and closed cases reopened?
I'm hopeful not, because obviously it impacts victims, but we will do what is right regardless. So we'll see what happens. I don't know.
That is a possibility.
It could happen. It may not. We'll just have to see.
Are you confident that the Phoenix Police Department is capable of doing a fair investigation into its own officers, or do you think an outside agency is needed?
No, I actually think they are very competent at doing this. They, unlike any other agency, they know the policies specific to Phoenix Police. They understand, the details surrounding this. So having met with them, I have every confidence in them.
A lot of people say an outside agency is needed here, especially in light of the DOJ findings and other concerns within the Phoenix Police Department that date back some time. Why do you think that doesn't apply here?
Because I have seen no evidence that they're doing anything but their utmost to investigate this case. They're being diligent. They're dotting every I, crossing every T. Like I said, I've met with them. I am confident that they are conducting a thorough investigation.
Off topic question.
Okay.
So the investigation your office is conducting into the pay-to-play allegations against Governor Hobbs. Where does that stand?
So we still have not received the final investigation from the Auditor General. We are in regular contact with them because obviously we're supplying support to that investigation. For example, the Auditor General does not have subpoena power, we do, so we can assist with those things, things of that nature. But at this point, we're still waiting for a final investigation to be turned over to us.
What are your thoughts on the Attorney General declining criminal charges in that case so close to the election?
Well, I mean, it's taking a long time. It's a detailed investigation, so I'm not looking at the timing of it. I don't know the breadth of just how much they looked at. But obviously they found that there was no reasonable likelihood of conviction as well.
And then one last question here on an unrelated topic. What is your position on the release of at least portions of the surveillance video and body camera footage from Officer Tyler Moldovan in the Essa Williams trial?
You mean the court order that restricted that?
Mm-hmm.
I certainly understand that. I have watched it. You have to keep in mind that while I understand why the public, might want to have that released, I also understand privacy concerns of a victim and family members.
You don't have any constitutional or First Amendment concerns about blocking the release of police body camera footage to the public, or the government blocking the release of surveillance footage taken from a private business?
Obviously, we're complying with what the court has ruled.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
So as I get closer to putting together some reports about how this office had used its detectives and the NCIC database to investigate jurors in a death penalty case, was that something when it first came out that you were aware of, and were you concerned about that, or are you okay with it?
Well, Dave, background checks on jurors, it is and has been for a long time a part of the trial process. Prosecutors do it, defense attorneys do it.
And this is using the FBI confidential database. This isn't just like a background check, checking social media. This is using something, one of the most powerful tools in law enforcement, according to the FBI, to investigate jurors.
Well, my primary concern in picking a jury is that I have a jury that is fair and impartial. And if we have information to believe that we're not getting full and accurate information from them, my responsibility is to the defendant and to the victim to make sure that they have a fair and impartial jury. This is not something that only prosecutors use. We've had defense attorneys actually ask us to use it when there have been suspicions that we're not getting full information. So,
but it wasn't done in secret like your office did. Didn't tell the court, didn't tell defense, didn't tell the jurors.
well, we had concerns. They were not raised by the defense.
The judge overturned, or actually dismissed and denied your request to strike those jurors because you guys, in your prosecutor's words, didn't like their demeanor. So just because you don't like how someone looks, or maybe how they, their body language in court, the prosecutors went then and secretly had detectives run them through an FBI confidential database for demeanor.
Well, Dave, sometimes one thing I would point out is Arizona is the only state in the union that does not have peremptory challenges.
That's correct.
And sometimes demeanor is not just, as simple as, the way somebody is acting, but it may be the tone with which they answer a question, the forthrightness with which they come forward. So not having been in the courtroom when that happened.
I watched it. Their demeanor was fine. The judge found no issue, and she said so. And yet your prosecutors thought, you know what? We're just going to do it anyway and not tell the court.
Well, the prosecutors did have an articulable reason to do it. Now,
They got
the court
turned down
ruled
again,
separate.
and the judge found that it was potentially criminal. In fact, I've spoken to experts all across the legal and political spectrum, from the far right to the far left, from the trial level up to the academic level, and they find this to be exceptionally concerning, very wrong, and potentially criminal. I mean, so how do you respond to that? It seems like your office and your prosecutors seem to be the only people I can find, and I've tried, that will say this is okay.
Well, that's interesting because I know a lot of prosecutors, and I've talked to them across the spectrum too, that do think it's appropriate in certain circumstances.
Secretly?
In this case, well, when you say secretly,
You didn't
obviously,
tell the court, you didn't tell the jurors, I mean, you didn't tell the defense, so secretly.
well, we felt like it was appropriate in this case. Now, the judge has her opinion. I respect her opinion. I respectfully disagree with her opinion. But, we'll obviously handle this and respond appropriately.
What do you say to a juror who is doing their civic duty and they show up and turns out prosecutors don't like them, just don't like them, and says, you know what, we're gonna run them, use our detectives to run them through an FBI database and scrub their life down and dig up victimization records and seal diversion things. How do you think people will be willing to come serve at a jury knowing that just if a prosecutor doesn't like them, they're gonna turn their pockets out and scrub their life down?
Well, Dave, I think that's a gross exaggeration on your part.
That's exactly what happened in this
And-
case. It's exactly what happened.
And if you think that both sides are not doing background checks to make sure.
The defense does not have the
I'm
NCIC
sorry, I'm
database.
talking.
You're not being forthcoming. The
Yes,
defense
I
does
am.
not have the NCIC database, so it is not both sides, it is this office.
I will answer that again. We've been asked by the defense to use that database to research jurors. It is when we are coming across jurors that we feel are not being forthcoming with information, my primary responsibility is to the defendant and the victim, period, to make sure they have a fair jury. And if the judge says we can't do that, then we'll abide by what the judge says.
You can check with the judge in that case.
So-
Are you checking with the judge now?
The judge is obviously aware of the situation.
I'm talking about just forthcoming for the future. Are you gonna check with the judges? Has the court indicated that to you, or is there still the potential that you guys will run off without telling anyone and use your detectives, sworn law enforcement, to go use an FBI
Even
contact?
before this came up, we were looking at revising our policy on that, so we're continuing to do that. This case is obviously, informing that.
Okay, so I guess very simple question. Do you think what happened was wrong?
In this situation, no, I understand why they did what they did.
And will you continue to allow it to happen in the future without telling a judge, the court, or the jurors?
I'm not gonna comment on the final wording of the policy, but we had been working on that. We continue to work on that
All right, thank you.
finalization.
Hi there, I'm Reagan with the Arizona Capitol Times. Couple follow-ups on the Sunshine residential investigation. The Attorney General had mentioned a few times that her office had conducted interviews with and shared information with the Auditor General's office and or your office. Can you talk about the extent to which those investigations will overlap given that coordination?
I wouldn't call it necessarily overlapping or coordination. There were some witnesses who had to be interviewed. And we sat down together to make it easier for the witness so that they could do one interview as opposed to multiple interviews. But it really wasn't a coordinated investigation between the two entities.
Some have already raised concerns about the Attorney General's findings given, her closeness to the governor. Are you at all concerned that the investigation being done by the Auditor General with support for your office will have similar doubts because interviews were conducted alongside the Attorney General and your office, an Auditor General's office?
Well, I don't think conducting an interview at the same time of a witness necessarily causes a taint. It just makes it easier for the witness to be interviewed once. If there are allegations that, the AG is biased because she's of the same party, well, I'm of a different party. So, depending on what our findings are, people can look at that then.
And can you talk a little bit about why, the Attorney General's findings came out last week? How much longer should we expect this report or this investigation to go on with the Auditor General's office, and why might that be taking longer than the Attorney General's investigation?
Like I said, I'm not sure, that the breadth of each investigation is identical. What I will say is that we are in regular contact with the Auditor General. Obviously, I would like to get this wrapped up quickly, but I also don't want to do it at the expense of thoroughness. So when we get it, we will definitely look at it as quickly as possible.
Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Hi.
I want to take you back to your time as a sex crimes prosecutor. When did you start?
In sex crimes?
Yeah.
1996.
Okay. So this is about the spousal rape statute and raising the charging level to others, sexual assaults. Why did it take so long for Arizona to do that?
I don't know.
Is that something you wondered about when you were a sex crimes prosecutor?
Yeah, I mean, I obviously prosecuted cases under the old law that was a class 6 spousal rape. And then I prosecuted cases after that that were spousal rape. I think probably there was maybe some lack of awareness of just how brutal some of those rapes can be. That may have played a part, I don't know.
Is this something you advocated for in any way when you were,
Yeah, actually, I lobbied that bill.
you lobbied that bill?
Yes,
You supported that bill?
absolutely.
And it went down in 2004. Were you involved then?
I think it was 2005.
It came back in
Yeah.
2005
Okay.
and it passed.
Oh, you mean it failed in 2000?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it was both years that I was involved. You're going way back on me, Bram, but yeah, I think I was involved both times.
Did you testify to it in 05?
I don't know that I testified to it. I think I lobbied behind the scenes.
If you can take us back to 04, what were your thoughts when it was just left to die?
Well, I mean, obviously I was advocating for spousal rape to be treated as any other rape, so disappointment.
Can you tell us, do you know how often spousal rape is actually charged? Or is the reason for the sexual assault charge, I should say?
You know, it's hard to say that because now that it's the same charge as every other sexual assault, we don't track it specifically based on the relationship of the victim and the offender. What I can say is that most sexual assaults, not all, but most sexual assaults are committed by somebody that the victim does know. Now, that may not be a spouse. It could be a boyfriend, girlfriend situation, or even acquaintances.
Do you recall back in the 90s, early 2000s, there was a movement among domestic violence, coalition for domestic violence to get a spousal rape, to raise the charging level? Do you recall any of that?
Sure.
What was that like at the time? Protests? Were they at county attorney's office?
Well, I don't think they were protesting
Legislature?
us. I don't remember.
I know, but lobbying, legislature.
Yeah. I mean, I just know that people were concerned about the bill, or concerned about the existing law. And we advocated to the legislature that it needed to be changed and treated equally with other rapes.
Okay. I have to ask a political question. Have you endorsed Andy Biggs?
I have.
Now, so you were on the other side of him on that in 2005. He voted no.
Mhm.
Why isn't that a problem for you?
You know, I know that just recently, I think 2 nights ago, he reaffirmed his commitment to women and children. I know that he has advocated that spousal rape be punished appropriately, the same. So I don't have the concern about that.
Thank you.
Do you expect the pay for the pay to play investigation to be completed by the election?
I hope so. I certainly want it to be completed as quickly as possible.
Do you have any sense as to how soon the announcement's going to be made, up or down on the investigation?
I can tell you I've had regular contact with the Auditor General. I know that they understand the need to get this done quickly. I've conveyed my wishes on that as well. So I'm hoping it's done quickly.
All right, anybody else? Thank you, guys.
Is this microphone here? Okay, I just want to make sure that it wasn't something we should take care of. Thank you.